Okay, we're here, everybody.
I have my iced coffee with this weird like French vanilla, and it leaves like these like weird
Semen
like
stains.
yeah, and it's like cottage cheese looking. It's the weirdest thing because my iced coffees I've been doing with like this French vanilla creamer for a little bit, and literally right after I drink it, I don't know if it's an hour or two, but I will just comatose. I'm completely out of it, like laying on the couch dead, but I continue to have it because it tastes good.
So you drink it to wake up, but it puts you to sleep.
Yeah, but it's like it's not even like it puts me to sleep. It's almost like a drug. It's almost like some heroin, and I don't even know what that's like. But it's like
And let me get some of
I'll
that.
just like put my head down on the couch and like I'll just feel so drowsy to a point where I wake up and I'm just like, oh, all from like a little bit of French vanilla syrup.
Well, I will say that everybody could use a little drugs nowadays with what's happening in the country.
Man, it's yeah, I mean I'm torn, just with even looking at anything normal now because I mean it's hard to find something that is what I guess is technically normal prior to anything that's been happening recently. And it's just everything's so draining, and I don't even. It's tough to even say really what you feel because I think people are just so quick to attack anything that someone says, right or wrong.
Just got to tune it out. Just got to not, don't read your Twitter mentions.
I know. But
That
it's like it's hard because it's like you want to say the right thing. You want to like be in favor of
can't please
obviously people.
everybody, man. It's just not possible. It's not possible to please everybody because you could say something that somebody loves and then somebody else is like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
I know, but there is probably like I guess a right. I mean, there's right from wrong, and I
Sure.
guess everybody's interpretation of that is different when it comes to your ideas and like thoughts around things. But I don't know. For me personally, I think this whole Black Lives Matter movement going on is so important because like it's just clear cut to me that like cops are using their powers, in the wrong ways to kill black people. And for anyone to even have like a butt to that argument or like they're like, yeah, I hear you, but let me tell you why. It's just like there is no other side to that really in my eyes.
Yeah, I don't like. We need solutions though,
Hmm.
and I'm totally in support of protesting. Although if you're going to protest, wear a damn mask because there's still a pandemic going on and it didn't just
Yeah.
randomly go away. Okay, but
That's what,
like,
yeah.
so I'm supportive, but there needs to be goals or else nothing will be achieved. Like if you go out there and you protest about any issue, but you're not saying here's what we want, then you're gonna fail. And
Mhm.
at the end of the day, all you will have done is basically blown off steam. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's also true that if people, let's say this goes on for 2 or 3 more weeks,
Mhm.
and then it stops, then what? What was it? What was it worth if nothing was accomplished? Like, don't get me wrong, maybe it actually impacted the fact that there were so many protests. It actually impacted the fact that they arrested the dude, and
Yes.
that and
Like the
now they're gonna
initial impact of something happening could be good with like a lot of uproar.
right. So maybe arresting him had something to do with the fact that there was so much pressure to do it, and also now Keith Ellison, who's a really good Democrat, like a Bernie Sanders kind of Democrat. He's the Attorney General in in Minnesota. He's going to be trying the case, which is also good news. Um, but like beyond justice in this particular case, which I think all reasonable people agree that he should be tried and he should be found guilty.
Mhm.
But beyond that, all right, we need to start having a conversation about what exactly the solutions are to police brutality, because you're right that there's a problem, but if people are just protesting and then nothing comes about from it, then that honestly is it's a failure of leadership. And in this case, obviously, it's just a total, there's a lack of leadership. Like there is no leadership. And some people prefer like a decentralized type thing where there are no leaders.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not a believer in that because, again, leadership helps set an agenda and strategize and actually get material wins. So I think that it's needed. And I said it on my show, but like I would love Cornel West or Killer Mike or somebody who has the legitimacy and the standing and the moral clarity to kind of fill the void and be the leader, because it's so easy when there's nothing specific that everybody's kind of circling around. Then you see these situations where it's like the peaceful protesters are kind of overshadowed by the 2% of protesters who are like looting and rioting. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. I totally agree with you. I think in any situation, like someone is always going to rise up and be, a leader. I think we have looked to the wrong people as leaders, so even, like I've seen recently, like, Andrew Cuomo tweeting something that's just like, who are all these people that, I don't know exactly his words for his tweet, but it was almost just like, how did we get to this point? And all the people in his mentions were basically like, you contributed to this. Like you've appointed, whether it's police chiefs and all these things that have that led to where we are now, where if it's a New York City police officer doing something that people don't like our politicians have contributed to where we are now. So it's like still supporting them is just continuing to contribute to the problem, so it's like, but it's such a big issue that yes, voting obviously is going to fix it, but like, yeah, what else really could be done? Like everyone can look at themselves and yeah.
I'll tell you what needs to be done. Because again, this is something in every segment where I talk about police brutality and what happened, I try to bring this up because I have to be cognizant of the fact that some people might not regularly watch the show and they stumble across a clip somehow. And then like, I want to tell them right then and there in that clip, here's what needs to be done. And just so everybody understands, I'm not taking credit for this because I didn't come up with it. Campaign Zero came up with it. And their whole thing is, how do we stop police brutality? And they came up with 10 data points or 10, policy prescriptions. The first one is end broken windows policing. And broken windows policing is notorious for like taking lower level crimes and cracking down super hard on those lower level crimes. The second thing is community oversight boards, which basically makes it so that the people who live in a community are kind of one step above the police department and get to evaluate the actions and make decisions.
Yeah, an example of that quickly, my bad, is just like at our high school, our school security guards would be from like the neighborhoods, like they'd be from New Rochelle. So like if a kid got out of line or did something in the lunchroom, he could be like, "Yo, I'm gonna tell your mom," or something. Like it's there was a relationship there.
Nobody's gonna get hurt because they know each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you have limits to the use of force, which basically makes it so that they're not allowed to do certain things. Like certain chokeholds are illegal, for example, in some police departments, but not others. It establishes more objective criteria where it's like, hey, here are the rules and you can't violate these things. The fourth thing is independent investigations and prosecutions. Anytime that there's, a police brutality case, oftentimes you have the prosecutor who the cops know and work with on a regular basis who are tasked with trying the cops. And basically, long story short, they throw the case to help their friend. So you need to have, independent investigators, special investigators appointed who can be more objective. Community representation is another thing. That gets to what we were talking about before, which is, you want to have community oversight boards, but then also people on the police forces who are from the communities so that, like you said, they know somebody or they know somebody who knows somebody. So it's not like you're not going to be so quick.
And they've been in their shoes. They've grown up and they understand what they can relate to this person, and it's not just someone they have no idea where they came from in their story, you know?
Exactly. I mean, that's what we're striving for. And then the sixth thing is having it like a national standard that they have to wear body cameras, and the body cameras cannot be turned off under any instances, under any circumstances.
Yeah.
And this is
Some
one where
Louisville,
when
all of their cameras were off.
see exactly what's the point of having them if you're not going to turn them on? But thankfully, I think the case you're talking about, Corn, they were
Mhm.
all fired.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Like I saw one of those stories where they said exactly what you said, that there was like a shooting and all the officers who were there had the cameras off, and
Mhm.
the police chief or whatever was like, I fired him. I had to fire him
Good.
because that's so egregious. But it should be like that in every single police department across the country. Film them, and then you cannot turn it off under penalty of law. You cannot turn it off at all.
Yeah.
Um, and then the seventh thing, and this is probably one of the most important, is that they need to redo the training to put an emphasis on de-escalation, because right now they don't do that. And I covered a story on my show where the police from the UK really showed how to do it, man. There was a guy swinging a machete at them, like obviously violent. Nobody would have faulted them if somebody like killed the guy, because like they were actually in danger. But what they did is they took like 50 officers, got them all together, gave them big shields, and then they kind of all moved in around him at the same time, where they just kind of like disarmed him and then, and then arrested him. And it was like, oh my God, in so many cases, they could save a life if they just try to save a life. Like if they just focus on that as opposed to always escalating, always being trigger happy. Um, and then there's also ending for-profit policing, which is a big one. There are for-profit police departments; those need to be gone.
Yeah.
Demilitarize the cops so
Fucking
they don't have
Texas
weapons
gave
of
me a
war.
speeding ticket when I wasn't fucking speeding.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what was going on with that, if that was like a for-profit department or if they're just scamming. I really don't know, but
Yeah.
that was obviously messed up. But demilitarize the police, don't let them have weapons of war, and then have fair police union contracts, because right now unions protect cops, where even when they're, when they commit the most egregious crimes, they still get the full backing of the union. So it's like, there's so many things that can be done. And then the most important is probably end the drug war, because the drug war has made it so that it's given cops a green light to over police poor communities and communities that have a lot of people of color. So I mean, these are the solutions. This is what has to be done. And it's just a matter of actually doing it. But to get back to your voting point, the thing that's crazy is that the Republican response is like, let's just like arrest everybody and let's not allow this to happen at all. Let's respond to complaints about police violence with more police violence. That's the conservative response. And then the Democrats just don't say anything or do anything. They're not like Nancy Pelosi didn't bring Congress back to say, let's have an emergency session here so we could pass some sort of police reform. They're just sitting at home.
The fact that she is like the face right now to like counter anything Donald Trump does is like, she's just as bad. Like she, like when she stands up there and like, I didn't watch anything she did, but she did her photo op holding a Bible, and like, is she contributing anything of substance to like make us feel better right now, or is she just making things worse also?
Okay, she literally helped Trump get a bigger military budget, and she also helped him helped him spy more. Like she increased his spying powers. So that says everything about Nancy Pelosi. She'll go along with the Republicans and then like do some sort of show disagreement. Like remember when she did the clap for Trump, like the
And ripped up the
condescending
paper.
clap, ripped up the speech. Like that's all a show.
See, this is
And
where I know we have a problem, is like people who are against racism, they're for Black Lives Matter, but like they'll get behind something Nancy Pelosi's doing. It's like these are the people that are just as bad as Donald Trump, or like a Republican who's saying something right. Like I don't think people look for independent media and like do the homework to find out how to get someone else elected, or maybe just money is that powerful that like they can't get their person elected. But to prop these people up like they're doing a good thing is just as bad as like a Trump or somebody else like that, you know?
I mean, yeah, you're right that it's just so hard because the media is not telling people the truth,
Yeah.
and they're not covering these things fairly. The politicians, you're almost always choosing between the lesser of two evils. And it's like, there's just nothing that's directly in front of people that's obviously solutions and answers. And
Yeah.
it's like, that gets back to the point we led with, which is that's why we need strong leadership. That's why we need Cornel West or Killer Mike or
But I
somebody
think
else.
without leadership, I think you start to see people take it upon themselves. Like I think we all
Totally
agree.
disagree.
Really?
Totally disagree because we're seeing it now. It's chaos. Like, these protests are chaos. Some people are doing peaceful protests.
Yeah, you're right. It's chaos, but then there's still situations like George Floyd's brother, who gave an amazing speech, who's, just like condemning the like the looters and stuff like that, and like says something so powerful that hopefully resonates. It's just that we're not seeing all the good stuff, but there's probably a lot more good protesting that's going on than the bad stuff, which obviously sells more than good stuff.
Absolutely. No, for sure. Like, don't get me wrong. 98 or 99% of people who are in the streets are just totally peaceful and they mean well. But again, it gets back to my core. It reminds me of, what was the thing? It was called the Women's March right after Trump got elected.
Yeah,
like, yeah, there were people out there in the streets, and okay, good. Like, I'm 100% for you being out there in the streets and protesting. That's as American as it gets. But like, and then what? Like, and then what? Because when you look at, historically successful movements like the Civil Rights Movement, they were like, we want the Civil Rights Act, we want the Voting Rights Act. Like, these are the exact things that we want. Here's like what it entails, and we're not going to stop at anything until we get that.
Yeah.
But right now, it's like every single movement is toothless because it's like, it's just getting out there and people saying, I believe this. Okay. And then what? Like, what? So what do you want? Like, what are you asking for?
I think in Minnesota, and I heard this earlier, I think there is a movement who's like the strongest, I guess, protesters in Minnesota right now, and they have a website, and they actually have tangible things that like they want done. So like there's certain people they want voted out, and they want, like you said, I think someone on the prosecution to like bring these other 3 officers and get them arrested. Like, I think they have a website with a list of stuff that they want done in Minneapolis. But you're right, in other states, it's just, let's go to the streets and we'll make a big uproar and we'll be really mad. But then after that, what happens next? And Molly's been doing a great job just educating me, and I've tried to do a better job of listening. But you're right. How long do people educate themselves for before they're like, all right, like, I think I have a good grasping on this. Let me just get back to what I've always known. At some point people stop. But you're right. I don't know. I guess I don't know. I keep going back to voting's the only thing, but like voting.
No. It's not. Voting's not the only thing, and in fact, that's like, it's important, but it's not like they're making it out to be the end all be all because Democrats are trying to like utilize this moment to just get back in power and then not do Dickie McGee's acts about it. Like, the most important thing is what's being done right now, in the sense that if you get people in the streets, if you scare the people in power, they are a hell of a lot more likely to do something to appease you. And in the process of appeasing you, they can meet some of your demands. But
that's true.
So they're doing the most important part of it, but they just need the direction. They just need the, like, here's what we want. And here's, our national leaders, here's what we're calling for, let's be fruitful in this. And so I fear that this is eventually just going to die out, and there's going to be nothing substantive that gets done over this. And then, and then we're sitting there and we're at the mercy of like, God, I hope that he gets found guilty. If he does not get found guilty,
it's like, even it'll be so much worse.
It'll be so much worse. You're right. But we haven't even spoken about Trump yet to this point, about his
No.
reaction. Because
I mean, yeah, I'll let you could talk about Trump. I don't know. I mean, you have to cover him because this is your job, but like, I don't get why people still get frustrated and are still saying, "Did you see the president said blah blah blah?" Because it's like, we know he's racist and he's gonna say some absurd shit. Like, stop expecting him to tweet some shit that's like, "Let's all come together, unity." Like,
no. I would normally agree with you. Like, you're making a point that I've made a million times.
Mhm.
But what happened this week is different. It's not the same thing what he did this week. What he did this week crosses a line in a way that it shouldn't even be on the table as an option. Like, that's how crazy. What he did this week is honestly one of the top 5 worst things he's ever done. And so it's bad, Corin. What he did is he called a press conference, and then in the press conference he says, we're going to use the military. I'm going to call in the military to all 50 states and stop what's happening. And because we need law and order in this country. And he cited this law from like 1806 or 1807 called like the Insurrection Act or something. Now, meanwhile, that law existed to stop slave rebellions.
Jesus.
Like, he's citing a law that was meant to stop slave rebellions. And he was saying, we're going to call in the military to stop what's happening in all these states. And like, I was saying it, I was having a meltdown on Twitter because I'm like, this is the president of the United States saying, we're going to invade the United States with the U.S. military and stop protests, which protests are literally, that's the whole point of the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, is that we all have the right to free speech, and we all have the right to peacefully protest, and we all have the freedom of religion. So that's the First Amendment. The First Amendment says we have free speech and we can protest in this country, and they can't tell you no. If you want to peacefully protest, the government is not allowed to tell you no. That's the whole point of living in a free country. Mm-hmm. If you don't have that, then you live in a totalitarian police state, authoritarian dictatorship. And that's not what this country is supposed to be. So I'm not lying, guys. When I saw Trump say that, for the first time, and I thought about this a million times and ran through it with all my what my litmus test is and what my policy preferences are, and I've gone through it a million times. But when I saw what Trump said the other day, where he's basically announcing like, yeah, we're not going to have a First Amendment anymore. I don't believe in free speech. I don't believe in free protest. I'm going to stop that because I don't like what they're protesting for. I said, damn, I might actually have to vote for Biden. Because as bad as Joe Biden is, he's not going to try to eliminate the First Amendment of the Constitution.
Yeah.
Is it possible that Joe Biden would, greenlight the National Guard going in, or would facilitate the states using their police forces and maybe going overboard with the police? Very possibly he would do that. But that is categorically different than using the United States military and deploying it domestically. The military is never supposed to be deployed within the United States of America, ever.
Yeah.
That's not a thing that happens. And so that is so different, and that's such a giant step beyond that. Like, it's just rank authoritarianism, and it's totally unacceptable. The fact that he even thought for a second that this is something that's okay. Like, and I don't know how to explain this to people other than to just say, if you are okay with deploying the U.S. military on U.S. soil to stop demonstrations, then you simply do not believe in the First Amendment or the Constitution. So you can never say, like, I believe in the Constitution or the First Amendment, because you don't. Because in reality, in practice, you're the opposite. You don't believe in it at all. So I've been really frustrated about this too, because I feel like there were some people who like understood the gravity of the moment, but then there's a lot of other people who just like, they just think it's like another thing. And it's like, no. This is like, if I had to make a list of the worst things Trump did, obviously on that list, one of the things that I was like, this is insane, is when he assassinated an Iranian general, like casually as if it was nothing, which almost brought us to war. Like that was on the list. And then now announcing I'm going to use a law from the early 1800s to stop protesters. And by the way, he says like, oh no, I'm with the peaceful protesters. We're going to do this to stop like the rioting and the looting. If you want to stop the rioting and the looting, all you have to do is have the police line up around the small businesses and have them stay there. And then you're good. There's going to be no rioting and no looting. You could use the police force for that. So it's not about that. Like, they're not, if you deploy the military on U.S. soil, they're not going to differentiate between who's peaceful and who's not.
Hell no.
They're going to say, get off the streets. We're declaring you have to get off the streets. And if people don't get off the streets, they're going to start shooting. Trump said it. He said, when you start looting, we start shooting, which, by the way, is quoting a segregationist from the 1960s who said that. Like, no, this crosses a line now. Like, he's got me, and I hate Joe Biden with every fiber of my being, but he's literally got me going, I might have to vote for Joe Biden.
Yeah. Yeah, it crossed my mind too, just because it's the stuff I've seen, and I've tried to sort of stay away from it. But again, I want to be knowledgeable about what's going on. But just seeing, he's hiding in a bunker in the White House and the lights are off, and he practically did what you're saying when he had like the tear gas to remove everybody in front of the church so he can go there and take his photo op. So it's like he's already doing this shit. What I don't get is that, like, out of all the officers and people he has that block him from going to take his photo op, how do they know one of them isn't just gonna flip and like is like the fact that there's people that I mean, I guess they take an oath to like defend him, but like, how are there so many people that will do that for the president? Is like,
sorry, I'm choking on my warhead. Because people want to believe in power and authority and hierarchy and that somebody is better than they are and knows more than they do. And so all the people who surround him, whether it's the Secret Service, whether it's the DC police or whoever, they're going to take orders. And they don't, I mean, have you seen the video of the cops going crazy and like attacking peaceful people, which I put on my channel? Like, so these are the people we're talking about. They have and by the way, it proves that Trump is gonna, if he were to bring the military into U.S. cities, they would not discriminate because he did not discriminate when he tear gassed peaceful protesters so we could do a goddamn photo op.
Yeah. Well, that's why I don't think, I mean, I really hope that there's a change. But like, when you see these videos of cops and it's like, they're like amped up with their weapons and they're excited to have these protesters in front of them because they know they're about to like hit somebody with their weapons. It just makes it so hard to think that anything will ever change because it's like everyone's a person. Like, just because you went through the police academy makes you more of an authority than me. Like, because you can hold a gun. Like, I find it hard to believe that anything will ever change. And I think it goes to the bigger point of like, it's on us. And so like, obviously there's going to be people who are just out there like breaking into stores and shit like that. And those people are just as fucked up as everybody else. But I think the majority of people hopefully change. And it's just so hard to see those videos with police officers doing that shit to people that are just out there protesting peacefully. It's tough to see that stuff, man. And it makes me not think that like anything's really going to come of this.
Yeah, it's also crazy because when there are so many videos of the police acting just like egregiously wrong, it's like they lose all moral authority. You know what I mean? And if anything, that'll definitely get more people out there in the streets. And actually, that's something I talked about on my show because I came across this interesting academic research about the civil rights movement where this dude studied it, and he found that when protesters were peaceful and the cops were violent, that was when it was more likely to get the change that the protesters wanted. So that's what happened in the civil rights movement when you had these Alabama sheriffs and police departments sicking dogs and
yeah,
hitting
they had
people.
water hoses and shit.
And Martin Luther King was like a pacifist in that not only is he not going to do any violence, even if you attack him, he's not going to do any violence. So the rest of the country saw that and it was like, it's almost like a cartoon type thing. Like you have one side that's pure evil and the other side that's pure good. And so what happened is people who were like on the fence all agreed with Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. And then they cared more about what they were concerned about. And then that's when we got the change. And it's like, that could happen now too, because the cops are being really, really vicious and you do have so many peaceful protesters. But at the same time, I think the fact that there are some looters and rioters, you know, that also kind of changes the narrative a little bit. And that's the other thing that that research found. When protesters acted violent, that made it so that the population was more likely to want law and order. And like they were more in favor of, you know, the cops like cracking down and getting it all under control.
Yeah.
So it's messy, man. Everything that's going on is messy. But the thing, it really feels like we live in a movie now. Like that's how it's so crazy. The thing that you brought up, the Trump photo op.
Yeah.
When they tear gassed the peaceful protesters and then he walked over there and then he's holding the Bible in front of a church, I was like, what is this? What does this have to do with anything that you were just talking about with the protests? Like what you're holding up a Bible in front of a church for a photo op? Like what are you trying to be? Not only an authoritarian, but also a theocrat? Like you want to be a religious leader as well? It's just so shameless.
It just doesn't it doesn't seem real. Like I saw, like, I think the White House put a video of him walking there, like on his grounds, and he just had like his people around him. It seemed like an SNL skit. Like it just didn't. And I hate to like even say that because it is real and it's like so bad, but it doesn't seem real that like he can stand there and actually get photos taken of him in front of this, like walking past graffitis, while like literally everything, like that meme of the dog and the burning building or whatever, and it's just like everything's fine.
This is fine, yeah.
It's literally what's happening. Like the world is burning around him, and he just still like there's still like 1 ounce in me that wants him to just be like, yo, all right, come on. You guys are all fucking up. Like, let's cut the shit. But like, how does any human being really just want to see the world burn down? He has to be the devil. Like, I just don't get how anybody can legit see what's going on and still just act like nothing is happening. Like, it's insane to me. And you said it. And I don't know if he's on some next level type of shit that you're on, where you sort of have to separate yourself from what's happening. But is he doing that? Like, is he just separating himself from what's happening in the world? But
I have no idea what's going on inside his head. Somebody made a good point where they said, because the night before he did this thing that we're talking about with the photo op and the tear gassing, and I'm going to bring the military in, there were reports that he was moved to an underground bunker for his safety because there were so many protesters, right? And then he tweeted fake news. And then somebody made the point that this whole thing he did was because he felt embarrassed about that article where they said, like, he's hiding underground. So he wanted to show everybody, like, me, bro? No, I'm tough, man. So I'm going to give a speech. I'm going to say we're bringing the military in. I'm going to tear gas some people. I'm going to take a picture in front of the church. So, like, it could have all been, like, a backlash thing from the day before when he felt, like, embarrassed when they said he was hiding in a bunker.
What's even more ironic about everything is just like we've seen. It's not like there's not the other side of this. So like when Colin Kaepernick was peacefully protesting, everyone was like, "That's not the right way to go about it." You know,
he was 1,000,000% right.
100%, yeah, like beyond right. But like we've seen both sides of it, and now we've seen both sides of white supremacists going out with their guns and protesting, and nothing happening to them. But now and Republicans saying, no, that's fine. That's their First Amendment. They're allowed to
Freedom,
do this
it's
shit.
freedom,
Yeah.
liberty. They get to do what they want.
But now when it's like liberals and black communities and like, just people of color, everybody, it's, it's against the law. Like they shouldn't be doing that. What the fuck's going on? And like
Trump supported them on Twitter, the Michigan protesters.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just like we've seen. It's just that's why you can't take anybody serious on the right. Like, and it's just like because we've seen how quickly they flip.
That's so true. I mean, don't get me wrong. I hate the Democrats too. The
Yeah.
Democrats are terrible. But it was literally just 2 weeks ago that he was talking about how these protests are great and he supports them. And then everybody's doing the comparison now of like, you have all these Republican senators who tweeted stuff in support of Hong Kong protesters.
Mhm.
And then now like are tweeting like they want, against the protesters now. And it's like, there's no consistency at all. It's just whatever my side, is in favor of, I'm going to argue that, and I'm going to abandon all principles, all standards. It's tough to watch, man. I mean, again, my reaction to that Trump thing was just, so I might actually be forced to vote for Joe Biden because Trump is basically coming out and saying, I'm against the First Amendment and I will shut down protests in this country. I can't have that. I just can't. That's not something that I'm okay with. That's a bridge too far for. And again, I'm the guy who tells everybody about the genuine, equivalences with Trump and Biden, where it's like, hey, they're both war criminals. They're both corrupt. They're both accused of some sort of sexual harassment or sexual assault. Like, I'll give you all that stuff. I'll give you, Biden for Wall Street deregulation. Like, I could go on and on. The Patriot Act. But Trump is saying, I'm against the First Amendment. And it's like, oh, all right, well, geez. I thought it was done. Like, there's no way that I would even consider anymore because I already got to the point where I evaluated it thoroughly that there's no way I'm going to vote for Biden. I already did the calculation. And then Trump throws this into the mix. And it's like, now the whole game changed. Because this is equivalent. This is something that's just so beyond the pale that it's not acceptable. And all the other things aren't acceptable too, but it's that all the other things were not acceptable, but also somewhat predictable. And also there was an equivalence with Democrats as well. This is one where there's really not an equivalence with Biden and it's not predictable. It's like totally un-American to say I'm going to deploy the U.S. military in the streets of America. That's insane.
Yeah. The craziest thing about all of this is just like, even with voting, it's just everything gets so like if it was difficult to try and figure out how to vote prior to all of this, whether, it was finding a voting station or like
New York is a pain in the ass, man, with that.
That's what I'm saying. Or like when even voting day is and like just everything that goes along with the voting process. Am I registered? Am I Republican or Democrat, or do I have to do it by this date or that date? Like, there's so much shit that goes into it. Now, on top of that, with the pandemic and like everything going on with rioting, it's like there were states that were voting today for, I think, the presidential primary.
Yeah, the primary, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm sure there was so many people that like didn't know how to go about doing it, weren't registered or didn't have an absentee ballot. Like, if anything were to be in Donald Trump's favor, it's everything going on right now, because it's just like it's got to be so hard to figure out how to vote for a candidate that you potentially want.
No, see, I kind of disagree with that because I think Trump is in more trouble now than he's ever been before, because there's just too much stuff going on, Cor. There's just too much chaos, too much mayhem. We have an economic depression with unemployment over 20%. We have a pandemic going on. We have this wild protests and riots, and it's just so much is happening at once, and everybody's getting hit in the face with it, that the default position now is that you assume your average American is like, we need to change, man. Because there's nothing comfortable about the moment. There's nothing normal about the moment. And I'm one who's I don't think the whole like, oh my God, we need to return to normal. I don't think that like impulse is a particularly good one.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that it's real as a heart attack, and people are going to really want to get back to some semblance of normalcy. And it could just be a flat out anti-Trump election, man, just an anti-Trump vote. And like, there's a lot of evidence now piling up that he's in a lot of trouble. Like I covered it on my last show, that crazy numbers that Biden is now way more up on Trump than Hillary was up on Trump at this point in the 2016 election. Yeah, it's like 155 days or something before the election. Mm-hmm. And at this point, Hillary only had like a 2 or 4 point lead, and Biden's got like a 10-point lead or something like that.
I know that all sounds nice, but like at the end of the day, like it's hard to trust any of that shit.
I mean, no, it can change at any moment, but my point is, it would have to change for Trump to win, because right now it doesn't look good for, like, if the election was today, no way Trump wins. Biden would win for sure.
And I just feel like there's so, like, conservatives always talk about cheating and all this stuff that could potentially go on. But like, I worry that all that shit would happen so much more on their end, just because there's so much chaos going on right now, that they would just be like, let's fucking dump out all those votes. They're all
me and you used to scoff at the idea that Trump would like maybe try to like stop the election or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a real possibility.
Yeah.
Because there's so much going on that it gives him enough of a BS argument to make, where he's like, what do you want me to do, bro? I have to. And it's like, that's terrifying.
Well, that's what there's governors in Texas already that are telling people to stay at home and not vote, because if you don't feel safe to get out there and vote, then don't do it.
I mean, I'm not concerned about like advice that's bad. I'm concerned about legit, like, actually
canceling it.
Yeah, or him pulling a Trump move and just being like, I don't buy it, so I'm not going to leave. Like, if he loses and then he's just like, I'm not. I think it's
I don't
fake
like
news.
that. Bill Maher always says it. Like,
but I didn't buy it until now. Like, I didn't think it was a possibility at all. Like, I scoffed at it, but now there's a solid 36% chance that if he loses, he'll be like, I think it's fake, because he always does that. How often, Corin, does he talk about fake elections? Like, we can't do mail-in voting because mail-in voting has a lot of voter fraud and it's corrupt. And like, everything that doesn't go his way, he has to come up with an argument that's like, no, it doesn't count. Like, if something doesn't go his way, it always doesn't count for some BS reason he makes up. And I think, why would it be any different for the election?
I feel, do you think there's any way that he sort of finagles some type of way to just sort of bow out and be like,
he loves this shit. He loves being
the
guy. He loves being the guy. Like, you're the guy. You're the boss man. You're the one that gets to call all the shots. With his massive ego and the fact that he's a narcissist, he cannot say no to that. Like, he registered for the next election almost like immediately after the last election. He was already fundraising within like a year for the next election. This dude eats, sleeps, and breathes this stuff.
I just don't know how he does. Like, I know he's on a different level and he's got protection for days, but like, how does he do anything without like fear of just always someone doing something harmful to him? Like, I just don't know how. I don't know. It goes back to just like, he's not a normal person, and like, he goes and plays golf with his buddies and stuff like that. But like, I don't know how someone can just constantly go around thinking that nothing's going wrong when everything is fucking dumpster fire.
Who do you think is going around thinking nothing's wrong? The Trump supporters?
No, Trump himself. Like, I just don't know how he does anything without fear of just something happening.
I mean, when you're that big of a narcissist, I think that the consequences of your actions don't occur to you as much as you just think whatever you declare is the end all be all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the thing he did the other day, the whole like, oh, we're gonna deploy the military or whatever. We're gonna use the Insurrection Act and use. I don't think it didn't occur to him for a second that, oh, this is like really extreme, unconstitutional, un-American, unacceptable. Like that didn't occur to him because in his mind he was like, I need to show strength, and this is showing strength.
Yeah, I don't. It's hard to believe anything he does, and yeah, that's extreme, and that's obviously scary. But like, for people to still get bent out on things that he's tweeting or saying, and are expecting him to act a certain way is just like, can't we just like give up on the guy already and just like not pay attention to what he's saying?
It's tough, man. I mean, he's the president. It's like,
I know.
There's so much riding on what he says and what he does. But it really is stunning to me how there's just such a disconnect between, like, he has no ability to kind of adjust on the fly and like sense the moment.
See, I would disagree with that, because I think like he's almost playing like on some like racist chess. Like, how does he know? Like, who would have thought to quote the Miami whatever and say the looting shooting thing? Like, where does he's not coming up with this shit. He must have some OD super racist white supremacist guy in his corner that's like, tweet this right now and that'll get everybody going crazy. Like, no one was thinking about that Miami, racist guy and his quote, but Trump somehow tweets it out. He knows what he's doing and he knows what buttons to press. Like,
Yeah,
we
disagree. This is our old disagreement that we've had a million times.
Like, you think Trump has done his homework and researched?
No, I think
that
it was
Miami
a coincidence.
Guy to tweet the looting shooting thing.
I think he said something that popped in his head, and it's a coincidence that this dude had said it in 1967, and he was a segregation.
Crazy ass coincidence.
No, I mean, listen, I tweeted the other day. Imagine the Great Depression, the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, and the tumultuous 1960s, but like all at the same time.
Yeah,
That's what I tweeted. And then somebody responded to it and showed that somebody else had a very, very similar tweet. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't the same order that I had mine in, and they described it a little differently, but the sentiment was exactly the same. So it happens. It happens. Like, the idea of, oh, people are looting. Okay, well, I'm against the looting. Well, we got cops. Maybe they should shoot them.
Yeah, when the looting and shooting rhymes.
It's not hard to come up with. It's like when a comedian, does a joke that's just so obvious, that's just sitting right in front of everybody's faces,
Yeah, I don't know. I find that, I think he's on some next level racist shit where he knows which buttons to press. But regardless, I mean, to your point, it just sucks that like the counter to Trump is Biden, and it's just like if there was just anybody competent in there, and like we didn't learn our lesson with Hillary Clinton, to just put like a normal human being in there, someone who could just like fake the shit, like just fake it. Just
honestly, anybody right now would be a favorite against Trump, though. That's the controversial point I made on my show. I think if it was Amy Klobuchar, she would be up on Trump right now. I think if it was Mayor Pete, he would be up on Trump right now.
Yeah. But what's Klobuchar's deal? Did she have? Could she override like the governor to prosecute the cop, and she didn't?
Klobuchar could have prosecuted this terrible cop who's a murderer who killed George Floyd. She could have prosecuted him a while ago, and she didn't do it. She chose not to do it, which is just like. And by the way, just so everybody understands, I've been predicting that the VP would be either Klobuchar or Whitmer. Mm-hmm. That prediction's no good now because.
Whitmer's which one now? I don't know.
The governor of Michigan.
Oh, right. Okay.
But Klobuchar, it's a lot harder. She ain't going to be picked anymore, I don't think, because she's like everybody knows now that she could have got this guy and she didn't. And so now with all the protests going on and stuff, Biden would be taking a massive risk if he picked Klobuchar. So I don't think he's going to pick her anymore, but I think he was going to. And I think he's not going to anymore.
I mean, but he's so tone deaf too that he probably would still do it, and everyone would just be like, dude, what are you doing? Like,
I think even for them that's too much, because they know that black voters are a major part of their coalition, and to pick the person who didn't prosecute an officer who killed an unarmed black man at this point in history, I mean, low key, Kamala's stock just went up. Like, there's some stock.
And Stacey Abrams has no shot. Like, why is she disregarded? Because he deaded her on TV.
OD embarrassing herself.
That
bro.
was funny.
Like, just doing anything and everything to like get the position, and he's just like, the reason I invited Stacey here is because I want to let everybody know she's a smart woman and she's got solutions, and her face is just like
face drop.
like, oh, I thought I was gonna get this. No,
dude, the whole, it's so tough with all this because it's just like there's so many voices just commenting on what's happening, and there's just so many videos of what's happening that like it makes it hard not to tune it out. And that's like I guess the wrong thing to do for people, because it's like it needs to be seen. You need to hear people more than ever now, but it's hard to listen to people because one, they're either saying some dumb racist shit or just like trying to just get at you for anything you say or do. Like no one's listening to each other, but there's so many people talking. It's like the movie where everyone's
That's a really good point, actually. Nobody's listening to each other, but so many people are talking.
Yeah.
That is true. Everybody's talking, nobody's listening.
And it makes it hard, it makes it hard for anybody to even change their mind, because if you do get someone to flip and be like, I see your side of it, they'll have someone else right underneath it like, no, you don't understand why, blah blah blah, and then it's like they flip back to their original thought.
You should ban yourself from reading your mentions, because that you're obviously triggered by your mentions at the moment.
Not even my mentions, but like, so my brother's not even on like social media right now, and like he was like, I don't really even know what you guys are talking about type of shit, but like, it's you gotta have your morals, have your values, like defend your family and type of shit. But at the end of the day, a lot of that stuff is just draining, and it's not helpful. Like there's voices like yours who are independent of like what's happening, and you try to just take a step back and see both sides of things and give just your thoughts on it. But then there's other people. It's hard not to have feelings. It's hard not to get caught up in
it's hard
in
not
the
to
moment.
have. Yeah, I mean, I was telling Molly this, that like I feel in some ways I found a way, and I don't know if it is a good trait or a bad trait. It's just probably necessary, but I found a way to compartmentalize everything. And I feel like that's useful. It's very useful to allow me to keep, trudging forward like a soldier, but it's also kind of psychopathic or sociopathic, because it's just very rarely that something pops through where I'm like, all right, that one's bad. Like the George Floyd thing was really, really bad. And with Trump basically ending the First Amendment, that got through where I was like, not like where it impacts me emotionally.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm so on autopilot that almost nothing surprises me anymore. Like when they did the $5 trillion bailout to the top, like to the corporations, and gave sprinkles to people, crumbs, I was like, yep, that's what I thought would happen.
Exactly. I mean,
and it's like, I
shouldn't
react like that. I should be like just so, just slapped in the face by that and get that sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach and all that. But like, I think when you do, I've been going since 2012, 2013. Like when you follow the news that closely for that long, it gets to the point where, like, what? How was anybody ever gonna, after Donald Trump got elected president of the United States? What? Where do you go from there? What story do you read from there where you're like, damn, that's wild? Everything from then on is just like, okay, well, the craziest thing ever happened, so why wouldn't, other insanely crazy things happen? But you're right. It's funny because I have a tough time grasping the fact that there's a lot of people who are just totally different from what I'm talking about, where every little thing impacts them. And which is why I understand the viewpoint that some people have where they're just like, I don't read any news. I don't follow anything. And it's like, nothing? Yeah, like nothing.
Well, that's
And
where Molly would say to me, like, well, that's your white privilege, because if you were a black man, like, it'd be different for you because, like, you'd have to live your life a different way. Like, I mean, like, there's no question that we have different rules than black people. We see that whether it's, them getting pulled over and getting killed, whereas, like, we might have more leeway if we get pulled over because we're white.
well, it's definitely true that young black men get the talk from
Yeah.
their parents where they're like, almost let them know, like, just so you understand, they are going to view you as a threat,
Right. Yeah.
kind of right off the bat, or they're not, or it just might be immediate suspicion. Whereas if a cop sees me driving, they look at me and think like, oh, that's just like my friends who I know and I hang out with. He's not a threat. Or they think when I was younger, they might look and go, oh, that's like my
Yeah.
son.
Get out of here. You're drinking with a beer or something like that. Like, they see themselves in that position. Whereas,
Right. Yeah, no, that's definitely real. And that's something that needs to be addressed. And that gets back to what we first started talking about with, like, there are answers, there are solutions. But in terms of, like, not following the news, I get why some people wouldn't do it. But Molly's right that if you do that, then it's almost like you forfeit your right to be upset at what happens when it comes to, like, the elected leaders making bad decisions and stuff. Because it's like, well, you didn't pay attention to anything and you didn't participate and you didn't, like, you didn't for a second dedicate any time, energy, resources into figuring it out to try to fix it. So now that something goes wrong, that's like, no, you're not in a position where, like, you have to be involved to actually try to change stuff. But we're all somewhat guilty of it. And I'll even admit to it that when it comes to certain, like, very local elections, do I know what's going on with that? No, I read the news, but it's the national news more than anything else.
yeah.
And so, like, for me, I had to research who to vote for in the Democratic primary for the congressional seat. Because now the person who's the congressperson in my district is retiring. So there's a big primary of all these people. I needed to take time to put it aside, to research, to figure out, because nobody's talking about it. It doesn't, like, casually come up in the stuff that I normally read for my news. So it took effort to do it. But this for a congressional seat, and I needed to make an effort to learn about it. Imagine for, like, some school board position or something.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, Dickie McGee's acts about this.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. And that's where people have to educate themselves. And it's tough because it's just like you don't know where to look necessarily. And these are things that are directly going to affect you. It's going to be your police chief. It's going to be your superintendent of schools that your kids are going to. And those are the elections that you have to vote in more than ever. So, like, people say my vote doesn't matter in the general election or whatever. New York's going to go blue or whatever. But, like, your town or your community is holding elections that you have to vote in. And I'll be the first person to say I don't know where the fuck to find all that information at. And I try to reach out to people, but sometimes they don't even know where the fuck to find out information about that shit. And
Like,
they just
for
give
me,
up. Like,
I literally had to Google search the district I'm in and then Democratic primary for Congress. And then I had to research, and I learned that I learned who I'm voting for. I think his name is Mondaire Jones.
Oh, Mondaire.
Yeah, Mondaire. He's for Medicare for all, so he's got my vote. But yeah, it required effort, and
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it too, like everybody else, not doing the school board ones or the super local elections. I just, you know, I'm just like everybody else in that sense, where it requires quite a bit of effort, and I'm not as engaged on that front as I should be per se. But like anyway, I keep going back to the same point of like, I totally get why some people wouldn't read any news at all and just be like, because imagine, like, who knows? Maybe I'm somewhat wrong, and it actually is everything is kind of weighing on me and impacting me more than I think. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And then it's possible that if I were to, let's say, I went on a news diet for a month or whatever, it's possible that like in that month is the happiest month of my life, and I don't even know why. Because that's what happened with me when I stopped reading Twitter mentions. I didn't like I just did it casually, and then something was the straw that broke the camel's back. Where I was like, I'm not reading these anymore, and then I stopped reading them, and then it was like double happiness immediately because it wasn't this permanent drag of like nonsense. Because we're only human. You can only take like I
And
think
we're
most
influenced
people
easily as humans. I mean, like
exactly
we
most
see something, we're like,
people
oh, that sounds right. And then you see something else, you're like, that sounds right.
I think most people are open to constructive criticism, but when the second that a criticism goes beyond constructive and it's just like gratuitously mean or whatever, it's like everybody's like, "Fuck this, man! Fuck this!" And so when I stopped reading mentions, it was just like instant double happiness, and I was like, "Wow!" I knew that it was annoying me. I didn't know it was impacting me that bad.
And
You
it
know?
just makes you perfect whatever you're doing. Like you just have more attention and focus on
Yes.
whatever else you're doing. So
Yeah.
like I
You
put
don't
up
want it.
exactly. And I put up Black Lives Matter. No, I put out Blackout Tuesday or whatever on my Twitter, and someone put like the Black Lives Matter hashtag waters down, blah blah, and then like Molly commented like he didn't put that shit. Like and it just I've been like thinking about it, and it's just like it just is unnecessary. Like it just didn't need to cross my mind if I didn't read that shit, you know. And it's like
That's it. Wait. That thought you had right there. That's it. That's the point. That's the point I'm trying to make to you that you just actually summed up perfectly. Like I
but like
didn't.
but like politicians and people who get mentions and advice, like you need to hear that stuff sometimes to like understand, like when people say for Corn's World chats, like listen back to them and like hear what you're saying, that's how you improve this or that. It's like fuck that. Like I don't like listening to them back. I do my shit, and if it's what it is, it's what it is. Like, could it be better if I listen back to it? Sure. But I don't know. I don't have the desire to do that.
Well,
But I have the
well,
desire and time
listen.
to listen to other people.
Everybody's different on that front creatively. So like there are some people who will listen back to every single damn word they've ever said to try to adjust and tweak and whatnot. That's some people. Other people will do what you do, which is just keep plowing forward, and that's that.
Mhm.
So I think that's more of a function of like how you are naturally. Like what is your DNA? What's in your DNA? How do you learn? How do you adjust? Like John Daly won 2 major championships, had a bunch of wins, one of the most entertaining and charismatic,
Yeah.
golfers of all time. He never practiced. And he said, when I practice, I get worse. And I
Yeah.
believe him. I believe him that when he would practice, he would get worse. Because when you're practicing, for some people, those shots don't matter.
Hmm.
Those practice shots, they don't have the weight of the shots you hit in a tournament. So like
It could,
if
yeah, worsen your game
you
as you're
can,
trying
yes,
to.
you can degrade and you could like not pay enough attention and just swing flaws creep in. So he was like, I never practice because I get worse. And I believe him. And
It's
then
the
you
same
have,
shit with me in stretching. It's like my
oh,
fault.
when you like play basketball or something,
Yeah, everyone's like stretch before you play this and that, and I'll try and like really go in on my hamstrings, and then I'll fuck my shit up even more. It's just like
and
just let me
then
rock how I was.
yeah, if you weren't getting hurt the other way, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. Like Tiger Woods always practice all the time, nonstop. But there's players who, I don't know what Jack Nicklaus was like, but him and Tiger are comparable. And I don't know if Jack practiced as much as Tiger. Like, this is just, when it comes to, how you are creatively, there's no right or wrong. Like, people have all different kinds of comedians, artists, whatever. Some people have to get high or drunk as hell before they can perform. Other people, stone cold sober, can perform.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when it comes to creativity, I feel like there's zero rules. It's all just what comes through.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm fine with saying what I said and being good with that. Like sometimes I'll think afterwards, like, damn, I should have maybe asked that shit or something like that. But then I'll normally just like text them or ask them, like, if I'm really curious about it. But I don't feel the need to go back and, I like hearing advice from people rather than like trying to evaluate the shit myself, if that makes any sense. Because I've always been under the impression that, like, I don't know how to do the shit as is. So like when a teacher would give me my test back and be like, try and do it again, I'll be like, I fucking got the shit wrong originally. What makes you think looking at it again, I'm going to get it right? Why don't you give me some advice on how to fix it? And then I'll fix the shit. But like just giving someone back work that they've handed in and saying, try it again, my brain is still at wherever I just gave it to you. So like, I'm not going to.
That's happened before where you've done a test and then a teacher's made you take it again?
Yeah, you never seen that? Like that shit always used to happen to me. They would be like, I'm going to give you the test again. Like, and just do it again. Your shit was all wrong. Try and do it again. I'll be like,
I still don't know it.
Yeah, what makes you think I'm going to know the shit now? Like,
that's actually really funny because I've never had that happen to me.
Well, I mean, it's like doing an interview and then them at the end of the interview being like, all right, this is sort of shitty. Do that shit again. And you're like, no, it's going to be a lot worse than the first time I tried to do it.
Interviews are actually such a good example of like how unjust the world is, because all it takes to nail an interview is being a good bullshitter. That's it.
And listener, I mean, like, people just want to talk.
I know, but if you can just turn on the charm, then you have a good interview. You know what I mean? So it's like, it just shows that there's no, like, you could have the best resume ever, all the experience you need, all the education you need, super serious about it. And like, you could go in there, and if you just don't have a personality that they like, you're not getting hired. And then some dude goes in there and has terrible resume and doesn't have the proper, whatever educational attainment. And he goes in there and he just vibes with the dude and is charismatic. And they're like, we like you, Ted. We're going to hire you. And it just shows you how, like, when we're raised, we're taught that everything, like, the harder you work, the further you go. It's a meritocracy. Like, that's the way it works. But that's just not true. It's not true that the harder you work, the further you go. That's not true at all.
No.
A system would make a lot more sense if that was what it was, but that's not what it is. No. That's just not what it is. Some of the hardest working people make no money.
Buddy. Yeah.
Some of the hardest working people make no money. Some of the laziest people make the most money. There are CEOs who sit on their ass all day.
100%. Yeah. I mean, you're right. It's the people who are usually getting promoted or, the hiring paying jobs are just because they get along with, someone at the top. And I forgot the point I was going to make, but I mean, there is a talent to listening to someone and like asking the right questions in an interview, but you're right. Being charismatic and like just connecting with someone on a personal level also like is a good interview also.
Yeah, they're different sets of skills. Like, it definitely has its place where, like a good salesman.
Yeah.
Like, there would be a reason in sales to pick the person who's the most charismatic.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, there's really no reason. Like, charisma is probably an overrated trait. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you don't need that. If you're talking about somebody who's an engineer, like, no, they don't need to be charismatic. So it's like, you don't pick based on that.
And it's usually the ones that are that come across as the biggest bullshitters are usually the ones that know the least about like the car or something like that. So like, you should go, if you're at a car dealership, to the most boring motherfucker in there and just be like, I want Billy over there who's picking his nose to sell me a car because he probably knows everything about that shit rather than, you know, Roberto over there who's got his hair slicked back and, you know, sucking dick.
Politicians, man, are a good example of what we're talking about. Like
Yeah, a lot of
politicians.
people don't trust that guy Gavin Newsom because they just say like he just looks too.
OD don't trust that guy.
No, I
OD.
mean he always says the right shit and looks like he knows what the fuck he's doing.
Nah, he's full of it. That dude's got like a dead prostitute in his trunk. Seriously. I mean, you cannot. Come on, man. You can't have like the 1980s hair slicked back like Gordon Gekko in Wall Street. Like, you're not allowed to have that and be a good person. Like, if you have the hair slicked back, you gotta be a piece of shit.
Yeah,
There's some shit you're hiding. I don't know what it is. Like, but there's some shit that you did probably back in like 1999 that you're regretting. You made a deal with the devil and you rose to like fame and prominence and whatnot. Yeah, nah, you can't. Gavin Newsom, he's too politician-y, man. That dude is too He's like a mix of a politician and a used car salesman. And it's just like, come on, dog. Hit me
Is
with
he gonna
like
try and run for president
probably.
ever?
He
Really?
definitely has the, he definitely wants it.
Yeah.
If you're the governor of New York or California, you want to be president. That's the rule. Like if you're governor of New York or California, two of the most powerful states in the country, like you probably want to be president.
Yeah.
You know?
Cuomo's gonna have. I mean, if he wants to run, but CNN is like trying to build up that whole relationship between him and his brother, and like just like play that whole storyline.
They're OD sucking off Andrew Cuomo on CNN. Like OD over the top, like playing his freaking, his press conferences and whatnot.
They're almost on some like Trumpian shit where it's just like
yes,
they vandalized your whole building in Atlanta and were like breaking your windows and shit, but you're still gonna go on air and act like you guys are just being, like fair.
Yeah. How should they have covered it? What should they
say that like, maybe, I don't know. I think just honesty is the best thing. And I don't know if they covered their building getting vandalized, but just be like, we fucked up for so many years. We're going to just be a real network right now. And Bernie Sanders, the dude, legalize marijuana, get your dick sucked if you want it. And just like,
that's
just
funny.
Be real.
Somebody said that the looting of the CNN building put conservatives in a tough place because they hate CNN, but they also hate the looting. So they don't know which, like, what are they going to do? Who are they going to side with? What are they going to say?
Does nobody know where the Fox News building is, though? Why didn't their shit get tore the fuck up?
That's a good ass point, bro.
I don't know, like, is there a building in some crazy bunker that nobody can get to, or do they have crazy?
I know where it is because I went there a few times. I had to go on the shows, and it's in the city. It's in New York City, and it's like just some nondescript. But actually, it's somewhat like you could. I think there's a sign that says like near it, like Fox
I think
News.
I saw where it was. I think I once sent you a picture of like, is this a show on Fox News?
Yes. Exactly.
Like
I think you did too.
You could see it. It's sort of like dark windows, but you could still see in the studio.
Yeah, but it's mostly just a normal New York City building.
The only shit I ever knew that was there was the MTV building in Times Square, because TRL always used to show that shit.
Right. The Fox News one is not in Times Square, but the TRL thing, that was Times Square. Every time that's how much we're kids of the 90s and early 2000s.
Carson Daly always used to be standing by the window.
When I saw Times Square, the first thing I thought was TRL.
Yeah, 100%. And then our high school, I think the cheerleaders were on one time, and they were. Do you remember that?
I do. Yes, I do.
They were like, I think they were in the studio, or maybe just like, because they used to have people waiting down, like behind a fence, and then they would like show the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Here's the New Rochelle cheerleaders," and I was like, "We made it, man! We did it!" And also when that kid Billy Archer was on the TV show Made.
Yes. He wanted to be like an opera singer or something.
He was like a big football player, tackle or guard.
Wait, was he fucking with him?
No, he was like, he really wanted to be an opera singer.
He was seriously wanting to be that?
Yeah. It was mad random.
I thought, like, I was like 50% sure that like he's just fucking with him. He doesn't want to be an opera singer.
No, that was real.
Who picks that as a career? Like, yeah, this is my career, opera singer.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how someone pursues like being a flutist in like a band.
Flutist? Is that even a word?
I don't know, or like playing the clarinet or some shit like that. Like people are in
Nobody.
professional orchestras that like play a clarinet. Like there's a LeBron James of clarinet out there.
That's a good point. You're right. There actually is. There is. But right now they're out of work because COVID-19. Nobody's showing up to watch like a band.
Unless they're protesting with their clarinet or some shit like that. That was a crazy thing too, is like like are the numbers of coronavirus going back up with all these protests? Like are
Now
people
they have to now. They have to now.
but it's like it's not even a thing anymore. Like it's like
Nobody's talking about it
no
now
one's
because
talking about that shit.
I mean that's what happens when you have a country that all of a sudden it's nonstop protests and riots over the death of George Floyd and police brutality. Like, yeah, the national conversation was just like swoops and just went that way.
It was literally the perfect storm of everything. Like if you have looters and rioters at a peaceful protest like before coronavirus, they'd be wearing a mask or you could point them out. And, you know, obviously you can't stop all people that are doing it, but you would see it and catch them on surveillance. And if they did have their face covered, you'd be like, that guy's up to no good. But just the perfect storm of everybody having to wear a mask right now just makes this whole situation like, it's just so bizarre, man. It's just everything is so bizarre.
That's why that tweet I had went viral because that's exactly what it's like. It's like if you took the Great Depression, the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic,
a bunch of surgeons,
and the 1960s, whatever tumultuous time for race relation reasons, and also sprinkle in there like the war in Vietnam too, because we're still in war with Iraq and Afghanistan. Like, put all that together, and that's what's happening right now. Dog, are the 20s cursed? Because in the 1920s...
Oh, yeah.
Well, actually, no. Because it was 1929 that the stock market crashed, and then we had the Great Depression. Now it's 1920, or now it's 2020. But in 1920, they called it the Roaring 20s because it was from like 1920 until 1928. Everything was like looking good, I guess.
I don't even know who would want to be president after all of this shit. Like, how would you want?
You got to be messed up, bro. You got to be messed up to want to be.
Why does Biden even want to do this shit? Like, doesn't he just want to chill? He's old and like.
I mean, seriously,
someone else. Like, legit. Why do you even want to sign up for that job?
I don't know, man. I mean, there's some people who just kind of want to work forever and do whatever it is they do forever. You know, like that's like, what's your theory on? Do you want to retire at a certain age? Like,
I don't know. It depends. Like, do you think Joe Biden genuinely like wakes up in the morning and is just like, I can't wait to find out what's going on in politics?
No, I think the thing that's driving him at his core is the same thing that was driving Trump at his core, which is he's a narcissist and he wants to be president. He wants that title. I think that's what drives it. But
yeah. And it also, I think, it keeps him alive.
Yeah. It should be a mitigating factor, though, that, like, it's to be president is such an immense responsibility. Like, that should give you pause.
Yeah.
That should give you pause. No reasonable human. And the funny thing is, I bet a bunch of people who don't want to be president will be better at being president.
Oh, no question.
Like, there's a lot of people.
I don't get how he wakes up, and I don't see the fire to like be like, I'm ready to just attack this shit and kill it, you know, like, because even if he did, he'd be out there like on more live streams or like doing more shit, you know.
They could. Well, I'll tell you, he looked like he had the fire in him for the Bernie debate. That's probably because they fed him drugs.
Yeah.
Seriously, they probably gave him drugs.
I wouldn't doubt the shit, but I think honestly, I really do think that like he does it just to stay alive. It was on some like Joe Paterno shit. Like there was a point where like at the end of his career, he wasn't really coaching the team. He was just like putting on his Penn State jacket and going out to practice with his sneakers on because like it kept him busy. You know, like there's old ass ladies who go into like a jewelry shop and sell one watch and they think they're still like working, like because it keeps them alive. It gives him something to do. That should not be a requirement for our president. Like, and you saw what happened when Joe Paterno, when all those allegations came down on him, he died like a week later because he wasn't working anymore. Like, if Joe Biden loses, I'm not even kidding. Like, he might die. It's on some shit like that. Like, I hope.
Wait, the Joe Paterno, it wasn't him that did it. It was Sandusky, right?
No, but he got brought into it because that was his right-hand man.
Oh, so they were trying to say that like he knew for sure and all that.
Yeah, there was the president of the school, but Joe Paterno ran Penn State.
You're
so,
right.
Like,
He did die like a week later.
he died like a week later, and there was someone else that happened to also that they were like working.
That can happen with Trump.
Nah, because he's like, he is like some RoboCop. Like, he's a robot. He's not a real person.
He's not a robot, but he's definitely like not human.
He's not human. That's
how can you be? He's so like he's fat, like he's kind of chunky, but dude is like 73, and he's still just doing shit.
I don't know.
Most fat people don't make it to 73. Like if you're really fat, you don't make it to 73. Like some shit happens at like 68.
Yeah.
Some shit happens.
Yeah, he's yeah, I don't know his deal, but like I'm trying to think of the other person. But it was literally they were working up until their shit. Then like some allegation or something happened and it was just like, fuck this, I'm dead.
Oh yeah, I know you're talking about too, but now it's gone. So I remember being like, oh damn, that person died?
Yeah. And it was just like just last week they were doing their shit at like the top of their game. That's what I'm saying. Like Bernie's got to keep fighting, man. Like if he starts going silent on Twitter a little bit and he's not out at his rallies, I don't know, man. Like he's got to keep fighting the good fight. But I mean, people said that he's been quiet on his shit too, right?
You keep going if you feel like there's a reason to keep going. If there's not, then it definitely impacts you. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Bernie's been talking more or not. I was disappointed with him, and then I just kind of like moved on. You know, we're stuck with Trump and Biden, and that's that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I have to reevaluate because I almost gave myself the mindset of like, just let everything burn down and maybe like, you know, we'll just, like Killer Mike says, like we'll rise from the ashes and we'll just start new again.
Yeah, but what
we're
would you
burning
do?
Down right now.
What would you do to have it burn down? Like you're not going to do it.
No, can't do anything. It's happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, it is happening now, but there's nothing like no matter what we do, you could do harm reduction, as they say. If you want harm reduction and just to get rid of Trump, you could do that. But if not, whatever happens, happens in terms of Trump winning or Biden winning. It's like there's no winning here. Like there's no winning. That's the sad reality.
But like we're coming to see right now with everything happening that like even if Trump does win again and he appoints these people, like I said last show, like I don't know. I don't think the first thing on like a Supreme Court justice's mind would be to overturn some abortion law or something. Like, are people in the Supreme Court even doing anything right now? Like, are they fucking working?
Yeah,
are they,
I think
like,
so. But
trying to overturn laws and shit like that?
I think so. But I'm actually kind of hostile to the idea that, like, if Trump, let's not kid ourselves here. If Trump picks the next justice, it's a wrap for the Supreme Court for generations, and that's not okay.
I've never seen anything with the Supreme Court justice, and I don't follow politics.
Yes, you have. You're just not connecting the dots. The reason why gay marriage is legal is because of the Supreme Court.
And if Trump had his people in there, like I feel like that would be something that's so overwhelmingly majority of people want that shit.
No. If you had a different makeup of the court at the time, this court might not have ruled that way. The court at the time ruled that way. This court might not have ruled that way. That's how.
So then, how does it work that states can do their own shit from here and there? You know, like Colorado can legalize marijuana and gay marriage, and not have to rely on the Supreme Court.
So that's actually a very, very complex issue. It gets back to federalism, and the idea is the federal government takes precedence over the state governments. So whatever the federal government says goes. there's this thing in the Constitution called the Supremacy Clause. So if the federal government technically is within their legal rights to step in to any state where they have legal marijuana and say, no, you don't. We're shutting it all down. The federal government technically can do that. The only reason they're not doing that is because we're coasting off the good graces of both the Obama administration and the Trump administration, respectively. So, like, he could, if he wanted to, just crack down right now, but he hasn't done it. So the states feel reasonably comfortable having legal marijuana, but they're still like, you don't see them. A lot of the marijuana business owners don't put their money in a bank because technically the federal government can like seize the money.
So grimy.
Yeah. So like there's the point. There's like unresolved.
You got to tiptoe around it. And
legal disputes going on right now. Like we know eventually at some point in the future, it's going to be legal at the federal level.
Yeah.
Marijuana will be legal at the federal level. But in the meantime, it's like we're trying to do so many things. Like we're trying to get to that point. But right now we're in this like legal middle ground where they're just kind of letting the states do what they want. But technically the federal government could shut it down whenever they want.
It's like the old poker clubs we used to play at. It's like the cops probably knew that this building here is where you play poker.
Probably played there.
Yeah, and at any point,
if they wanted to,
it's a rap skis.
Exactly. So anyway, you got anything on your agenda before we wrap it up?
No, I don't. It's a crazy fucking time, man. And like, you know, I live in the suburbs, and I'm sort of just seeing everything through Twitter or Instagram, but like real shit is really happening in like the cities, and the videos are fucking insane to watch, man. It's insane. And it's insane that like, I was going to make the point earlier that like the police officer who killed George Floyd will get like some, you know, Michael Jordan-esque type lawyer, which clearly shows like I fucked up OD, but I'm going to try and get the best lawyer to get me off the case. And I was going to make the point that it's almost like if I was trying to play, you know, 2-on-2 with someone like these amazing basketball players and I brought in LeBron James, they'd be like, oh, he must really suck if he's bringing in this really good-ass dude to pick up his game. So it's like we just live in such a weird system that like we clearly saw what happened, but this guy is going to have the opportunity to bring in some lawyer who I don't even know how they find a fucking lawyer to defend him.
I'm not concerned. I'm more concerned about like the medical examiner was already trying to kind of help the cop. Did you see that? Yeah. Like that's the stuff that concerns me is like the more like the rigging angle of it.
Yeah.
Than the lawyer being able to get him off. Because
well, yeah, to your point. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say like they all know each other in the courthouses. They come and do tickets, all this shit for people all the time.
We lucked out though in this one because Keith Ellison, who's the Attorney General of Minnesota, who's good. He is actually going to try the case, which means there might actually be justice. But I'm still shook because, man, listen, the only police brutality case where they served justice was the Walter Scott one, where the dude was literally running away back to the cop, and the cop pulled out a gun and casually shot him in the back and murdered him. That's the only one where I've seen justice. The Eric Garner one, I think the cop got off, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't even know if they tried the cops that shot the lady in her house.
Yeah, I don't have no idea. The Breonna Taylor one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea. And it's like, again, if they don't find him guilty, it's a wrap on so many cities. Like, it is going to be burned down. But, I mean, listen, they could find him guilty. And, you know, if they find him guilty, then I think most people across the country will be celebrating because 100% of people I've spoken to have been like, that was messed up, man. That's murder. You can't do that. You can't do that.
Yeah. It's weird though with people with you know who just automatically. It's like when you used to send a IM to you and you would get your like auto response, just instantaneously would come right back. If you put like Black Lives Matter, fucking racist will just auto response. All lives matter. and this shit will just auto-populate right underneath whatever you're writing. It's like they don't even see another side of this. And people make that firehouse analogy of like there's houses burning and one's not burning. Are you going to put them all out or put the burning houses? Like you shouldn't even have to use an analogy.
Or I have cancer. Yeah, but all diseases matter.
Yeah.
But I said I have cancer. Yeah, but emphysema matters too. It's like what?
I'm just it's just I don't it's ignorance, and it's just like it's so dumb for people to just have an argument against black people not being equal.
Yeah, I mean, they don't, to be fair to them, they wouldn't say they don't want black people being equal. They just think that the Black Lives Matter movement goes too far in some respects, they would argue. But I don't, listen, to me, man, all I care about is the damn solutions. And
yeah, that's true.
Unfortunately, I don't think that we're going to have the solutions met, because I see a lack of leadership, and I see a Republican Party that's actively the enemy, and I see a Democratic Party that's going to do absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Is Antifa supposed to be like left of even like Bernie Sanders supporters? Is that
Antifa is supposed, so Antifa stands for anti-fascist. And so the idea is they're against fascists. They're against white supremacists. They're against Nazis. And like, they try to organize to stop the far right from doing bad stuff.
Uh-huh.
And the controversial aspect of Antifa is that they do not believe in the civil rights approach of nonviolent peaceful resistance. They believe in, maybe doing some property damage here and there in order to, like, mess stuff up for some bad people.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not as against violence as the civil rights movement was, and that approach was. So that's the aspect of Antifa that's controversial. And I've said this before, but I agreed with Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky said that Antifa is a gift to the right, because it's so easy to point at them and say, look, they believe in violence. Yeah. So, like, hey, average American, is that who you're with? You want to be with the people who commit violence? And I've always hated the idea of, like, using the tactics of the people you despise, because that's why I despise them. I despise, white supremacists and far right people, partly because they believe in violence. Like, I don't believe in violence, so I'm kind of against them. So I never liked the idea that they, like, kind of copied those tactics in a way. But, I guess to be fair to Antifa, it's like, in the broadest sense, we're all Antifa, because we're all anti-fascist. You know what I mean? Like, we're all against anybody who's not a fascist is against fascism. And the original anti-fascists were like the U.S. military and the Russian military and the UK military fighting Nazi Germany. Yeah,
so we're all ready to fuck shit up at the drop of a dime.
I mean, we defeated the Nazis, and we were anti-fascists. Like, that's what that was. Like, we were fighting on the side against fascism. So, yeah, I mean, we all agree on that front. I guess it's just, how do we advance left-wing causes? And also, I think if you talk to people who are part of Antifa, they would I think most of them would say they're communists or anarchists. That's what I think. I don't want to straw man them. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think most of them would say they're either communists or anarchists. And me, I'm just not that. I'm a social democrat. I believe in social democracy. So, and in some ways, I guess you could say socialism more broadly, because I believe we can democratize the workplace in some ways and have, like, worker-owned co-ops. But, like, that's my position is very moderate around the world, whereas, I would argue communism and anarchism, those positions are a little bit more still living in the world of theory than reality, where it's like they want to try a way to make things better, which has not really been tested, tried and true yet. You know what I mean? There's no empirical thing you could point to say, see, they did it right. Whereas for my position and Bernie Sanders' position, you could point to, like, Denmark and Norway and Iceland and Sweden and be like, see, they already do the thing that we want to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, on that note, guys, we love you. Everybody stay safe out there.
Yeah.
Make sure that you keep your mask on when you go out in public. Make sure you do social distancing as much as possible.
And if you're
out there,
protesting, just keep it peaceful.
if you're protesting, keep it peaceful, but also keep a mask on because we don't want you getting sick because there is still COVID-19 out there, and it drives me crazy when I see people not protecting themselves from it because you can get it. You can still get it. So anyway, everybody stay safe. We love you. Hopefully the world is still around next week. so we have another Kyle and Corin, but we're out. Peace.